there everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in again for another weekly update on news and information about DCS World. I'm your host Prickly Hedgehog, and as always I do hope this week's newsletter finds you well wherever you're tuning in from. Well, let's take a look at this week's newsletter from Eagle Dynamics and what it might mean for us. The update, of course, was a pretty big patch of various fixes and improvements this week in open beta. But before we do that, we can't ignore what I'm calling the news of the week, which was the announcement of a partnership between third-party developers Heatblur Simulations and True Grit Virtual Technologies. That's right, the Typhoon is coming. It is alive and well, apparently. Now, as most of you know and probably saw, Spudknocker mentioned my video yesterday in a news-related video on this topic without directly naming me. He apologized, he forgot my YouTube handle, and we did discuss this a little bit. No offense was intended with him referring to my clickbaity video. And yeah, I did make a pretty prodding community video on the third-party developers and the various projects that they were working on a few weeks ago. And of course, I did pose a very specific question, and I guess a theory a little bit in that title: is the Typhoon dead? Now, as clickbaity as the title was intended to be, the question, I think, was twofold. One, obviously it garnered attention, which is what you do in the news realm, but also it did pose a legitimate question. And several of you, after the video was posted, my trusty eagle-eyed viewers, actually took up the challenge and started looking into this particular topic for us. And it was pointed out that Miltech5, who is a 3D developer and has actually been working on the BO-105 twin-engine light helicopter for some years now, recently teamed up with Razbam and also announced that he was working on the 3D work for the cockpit of the Eurofighter for True Grit, and this was occupying some of his time. He's pretty busy right now and working on this product, and some people asked questions about what his role was there, and he basically admitted he's essentially being employed by True Grit as one of their lead 3D artists. Now, I believe Miltech5 is his real name is Oliver Michel. Now, so other people also pointed out, hey, there were some interviews around, a few months ago. There's snippets of stuff. There was some comments here and there that indicated basically that the project was still being worked on, even though we hadn't seen any major updates through their social media websites for whatever reasons. And some people pointed out, well, if you're really busy coding and you're making breakthroughs, the last thing you want to do is take time away from that to find somebody who can go and do a stupid newsletter, and as I pointed out last week, yeah, part of our role here is to find out news and, pick things apart where these smaller studios don't have time to do that, or prod like I did, and see if we can get a more interesting update, which is exactly what we got. So I was actually going to do a follow-up video on this information and say, hey, this is what I've learned. Miltech5 is doing some stuff. This guy is working on a helicopter, but he's also doing quite a bit of work for True Grit. This is good news. That means that the project is still being worked on, so stay tuned. Hopefully we'll hear an official comment from True Grit themselves. Well, all of that went by the wayside because the video emerged. And as I said before, it announced that there was this partnership between Heatblur, as mentioned, and True Grit. They've teamed up, and the Eurofighter basically is still in the pipeline. We have a really snazzy cinematic video yesterday, featured some amazing looking interior feature shots. We had some exterior film work going on, and some German livery of the exterior. So little bits and pieces here. The video was a little bit grainy because it was cinematic style, so we didn't get any crisp features of what we could deduce as being final product stuff, nothing like that. But I noticed, interestingly enough, that the video has in fact now been taken down. It's gone private. We can't view it anymore, which of course adds a little bit to the mystery. Now, there could be a number of reasons for this. One could be that, hey, we've made our point. You wanted news, you got your news. Hey, we got more than we bargained for. It also indicates that I don't think this partnership didn't come about because of my video. I don't think. I would be very surprised if that was the case. It would be a terrible coincidence, actually, if that was the case, because it would mean potentially that True Grit were in serious trouble, and maybe they reached out, to another third-party developer and said, hey, we need a lifeline here. that's a really bad scenario, I think, for us. What I suspect the reason is that they were quiet was because they've been working on developing a partnership with Heatblur for some time, and they couldn't make any announcements about what they were working on as they negotiated some sort of contract between the two franchises as to how they were going to go ahead with this new project. Now, again, I don't know why the video was taken down. I know sometimes that there are non-disclosure agreements that ED has. There could be a whole lot of more negotiation going on with ED too about what they can share, where the project is at, what they're up to, how it's all going, because ED does have pretty strict rules about what you can produce. They want high quality products and all the rest of it. And essentially, the research that I've done, looking at other interviews with some third-party developers, I noticed that it appears that producing modules for Microsoft Flight Simulator is a lot easier than producing ones for Eagle Dynamics' DCS World. And this is not a criticism, it's just the way in which the data available to producers of modules for DCS World works as compared to the collection of data that you get from Microsoft Flight Simulator. They basically, here's your pre-package, if you like, go ahead and create your aircraft based on that information, whereas the stuff in DCS World is a little bit more complex because we've got a very advanced flight model going on, plus we have all the simulation of the weapon systems and the weapons being launched or dropped from the aircraft as well, and there's a whole bunch of calculations and all that kind of stuff that goes with that, which we've seen in the past. So we're talking a little bit more layers than what we would see typically in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I'm not trying to get into a pissing competition with the two franchises here, but one obviously involves some additional layers of depth, as I mentioned. So the other thing too with these non-disclosure agreements that Eagle Dynamics will have, they're going to protect the data that they have, because they do have a lion's share of the combat flight simulation market. They do not want people reverse engineering or hacking into stuff if you were to release inadvertently or release things that you're not supposed to. That data could be, or that information could be, as I said, garnered by other competitors. So not just to keep us in the dark, it's just a way of them protecting the franchise that they have and the information that has been garnered over many, many years. It's a proprietary product, and they're going to want to protect it. So aside from speculation about why that video might be down, I think the positives here is that we got a massive bonus amount of news this week on that particular aircraft that we were very much wondering if it was still alive. I think the question has been answered now. We can see that content is being worked on based on the video that we have. We know that the two companies have teamed up, and furthermore, it's a good move. I mean, True Grit basically has joined one of the more polished and professional developers of third-party modules in the game, and there's no question that overall it bodes very well for the flight sim community in general, as the Eurofighter is a mightily popular module. Even without an official AI in the game, it's still very much sought after, and people are salivating at the prospect of this aircraft being in game. So let me know what your thoughts are on the topic in the comments below, and of course stay tuned for more information in the future from Heatblur and True Grit. I'm very much looking forward to it. I want to thank both teams for producing that fantastic video, which looks really, really cool, and I wish them all the best, and hopefully I can have some more fantastic news from you in the future. So let's get back to the main newsletter from Eagle Dynamics. Let's turn back here to the main newsletter this week from Eagle Dynamics, which features news about the channel map, the F-16, the F-18, and I believe there's a new ground object as well. So let's delve into that a little bit more. The channel map is getting set for final release fairly soon here, and along with a broad set of enhancements and optimizations, they are saying here that you're going to find the addition of the Armene's prison that includes a comprehensive structural damage model. Multiple cosmetic fixes and improved scenery around unique objects are also included in the next update. Now, why would they bother with comprehensive structural damage to a prison as opposed to any other object in the game? Well, of course, you may remember that that is so that you can reenact a famous raid with your mosquito and blow up the walls of the prison and part of the building, hopefully to allow the housed prisoners there an opportunity to escape. If I remember rightly, the raid on the prison was done after they learned that numerous members of the French resistance were going to be executed the following day. So a hastily prepared strike was put together using mosquito bombers, and they were able to fly at very low level, damage the prison in such a way, and allow prisoners to escape. I think there were some civilian casualties during that. I think one bomb may have hit a school tragically, but the French people, being very forgiving during that time, overlooked that tragedy because it meant that obviously many lives were saved. And of course the Gestapo were known for their brutality during that period against the French resistance, who were a thorn in their side. So good stuff. That's a neat thing. Now let's continue on with the channel map. What they're saying here is that they're completing work on all existing airfields and resolving aircraft collisions with static ground objects. Basically, they're going to redo some of the taxiing logic of AI aircraft, so that's good news. Multiple cosmetic bugs have been resolved, and there's new and unique objects and supported facilities that have been added to provide a more realistic appearance. Improvements also cover the railroad network, the Citadel d'Arras, and more. The area around the city of Amiens has been reworked to include much more detailed buildings, trees and bushes, which is good news, again, as I referenced before. Now, the Viper, of course, is going to receive numerous updates as it continues to progress. One of those is a new munition known as the Wind-Corrected Munitions Dispenser, which apparently is going to come to the Viper later this summer. The WCMD, or WICMID as it is known, is a cluster munition that will correct for wind effects and errors during a ballistic fall, and turns basically a dumb cluster munition into an accurate smart weapon. With the addition of this weapon, you will be able to independently assign multiple WICMIDs to targets in a single pass, using multiple steer points as targets. How cool is that? WICMID versions include the CBU-103, 202 BLU 97B submunitions, and the CBU-105 with 10 BLU-108 sensor-fused weapon submunitions, or SFWs. Oof, lots of acronyms there, but that's the military for you. So that's cool news. Now, they have a video out as well, which will show us information about the AGM-154A Joint Standoff Weapon, or JSOW, for the Viper. The JSOW is an unpowered glide bomb, that weighs approximately 1,000 pounds. It has a range of up to 70 miles, depending on launch altitude and airspeed. And it is a fire and forget weapon that uses INS and GPS data to reach its designated sensor point of interest. Check out the video. I will put a link in the description below. Wags has been busy this week with several videos. Good on him, including a little tongue-in-cheek reference to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, if you are not familiar with his reference to Thanks for All the Fish, which was fun. Well done, you Wags. All right. The Hornet, of course. Now, this has, this should be very close to final release as well. And one of the most complex and confusing aspects of operating the Hornet is the correct use of the air-to-air radar. So Wags did a little overview of that as well. I'll try and put a link in the description below so you can check that out. I had a little radar tutorial myself thanks to the Air Warfare group, and we got to look at that cone and the radius and what kind of information is presented. And it is a little bit confusing if you're not familiar with how that works. It seems straightforward at first, but then you as you move the aircraft around, some of the data presented to you can create confusion. You're wondering why you're not tracking things properly, etc., etc. It's kind of an interesting little overview. It's very, very helpful. Hopefully you will find that helpful. It's well worth a watch if you're struggling maintaining targets, or wondering where they're disappearing to, and the difference between, you know, a slow wideband search pattern as opposed to a shorter band of focus, which is going to give you much more data, etc., etc. So take a look at the video. It's well worth watching. Now, as part of one of the updates, we now have the JHMCS alignment procedure for startups in the F-18 from cold start. So you'll need to perform this alignment now, and if you want to avoid alignment issues with the symbology, so if you're performing an auto start, the alignment is obviously going to be completed for you. I know a lot of people can't be bothered sitting there going through. I kind of enjoy the F-18 startup. It's kind of fun. I love listening to the sound of the APU. I get a kick out of it every time. I don't know why. It's just a frivolous thing. Anyway, so and again, another WAGS video tutorial on that, and that's when he mentions the fish too, if you were wondering. And that is part of a mandatory process for the cold start now. Now, I mentioned the new ground unit. This is a NASAMS, or NASAMS. This is the National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile Systems. Now, NASAMS is a Norwegian-developed medium-range SAM system that was introduced in the mid-1990s. It utilizes the proven AIM-120 AMRAAM missile, and combined with an MPQ-64 Sentinel 3D radar, it represents a formidable threat to aircraft and helicopters, like your Hind, at low and medium altitudes. A typical battery consists of 3 launchers, each with 6 missiles. My God, that's a lot of spam RAM. So the radar unit and an FDC fire control unit. NASAMS is in service with a number of countries, including the USA, no surprises, and it is notably used to protect high-value targets such as the White House in Washington, D.C. Good stuff. So the ground unit is now available in the latest open beta update. And remember, that is a separate version of the game. We've talked about this in the past. If you don't have open beta, some of the things discussed in this video may not be available, but they will be at a later stage as the game progresses and transfer to the stable version. Alright, well that brings us pretty much to the end of this week's newsletter. Once again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and sticking around to watch the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if feasible. It helps the channel chug along, as I say. This week's beer recommendation is Peroni. This is an Italian product which I'm quite enjoying. It's somewhere between, I don't know, what would you call it? It's got a reminiscent taste to me, maybe Stella Artois-like, but it's different than that. Oh gosh, there was a French beer I used to drink in New Zealand as well, which I quite enjoyed. It's on the tip of my tongue and I can't remember what it is. Kronenberg. I think it was the Kronenberg. That was really nice. So it reminds me of that a little bit too. Anyway, so that's my beer recommendation. It's extremely hot in Minnesota, and I have finally, after spending a lot of money with one company, I finally got another company whom is a little bit more professional and reasonable in their charging. I got my air conditioning fixed, rendered the problem, and it was caused by a capacitor on the blower motor, which was not producing enough voltage, I think, or amps. It should have been 5 plus or minus 5%. Apparently it was down to 3.5. That was causing the motor in the fan, to the blower at least, to overheat a little bit. That would cause the whole thing to shut down, because it's saying, hey, you're going to burn this motor out and we're going to protect ourselves, and I'm not going to let you draw power from the AC unit and kick that whole thing in. So lessons learned. But anyway, it's been hot. Cheers everybody, take care, carry on flying, and have a great weekend. We'll see you next time if I don't see you beforehand. It's Prickly Hedgehog out.